My living experience in Manhasset was an enjoyable living experience in Manhasset. If the clocks could turn back to those years.
My memories of that time period, of the people that lived in the community in that time period, they're golden memories. They're golden memories.
See, I'm speaking about history that a lot of people don't even know nothing about.
You're having me to go back almost 65 years.
Behind the AME Zion Church at 519 Community Drive is the burial ground of the Manitowoc Indians and the former enslaved African Americans of the Manhasset and Great Neck area. After the Civil War, African Americans from the South found themselves in a world of freedom, and with that freedom came hunger, hardship, and the intimidating challenges of survival. In search of prosperity, African Americans came north. This is the story of those who settled on Spinney Hill.
Well, from what my mother tells me, this was an agricultural country here on Long, I guess like most of the country, and they were farmers. My grandmother's homestead, which was at entrance 3 to North Shore Hospital. Her brother, Joseph Davidson, he had a farm. And his farm was large enough so that he hired neighborhood people and relatives to pick beans for him and tomatoes and other produce. And my uncle, my mother's brother, had a horse and wagon, and he would take that produce to Newtown Market, which is in the city. And where the golf course is, he grew asparagus. My mother said they were like asparagus fields all along there. There were no boundaries, no fences, and things of that nature. So they were farmers. They also followed the Manhasset Bay and did clamming, dug clams. So clam digging and farming, that was it. Until let's say my mother was born in 1901. In 1920, that was the time of the Gold Coast era. That's when the wealthy people were coming here and building these large mansions.
It wasn't that much jobs in the South other than picking cotton, picking tobacco, or, hard labor. So they come up, especially when the people started to hire, the rich people in Great Neck started to hire women to come and work in their houses, day workers and week workers. That went on for many years, up until maybe into the 1970s. There was a strong influx of girls coming from all parts of the South to work on the sleep-in jobs.
My uncle was a chauffeur at that time. That was considered a real plush job. And the women did housework.
I mean, you had 80% probably of domestic workers. When my parents came, domestic, that's where they came. They came looking for more money. And if they didn't have the skills, if like my moms who finished 6th grade or somebody, what else are they gonna do but domestic work? And so you had you had some exceptions of people, like the Powells maybe, who came, who were fortunate to buy cabs, but there was those were the exceptions. But I would venture to say that most of, with the exception of a few who worked for the town, like the Swingins and some of the other people who worked for the town, is that at least 70% of the people probably worked in domestics.
And that's why we felt we needed job opportunities, we needed job training. There were some people in the community, like Mel Greenberg was one, I don't know if you know about him. And he had a factory and he took people and trained them.
There was a man by the name of Judge Rigby, and he cleaned offices during the day for the Nassau County courthouse or the court buildings, and he went to law school at night, and eventually he became a judge. He was one of the first black judges in Nassau County who, I think he came from one of the islands, but as a young man he assessed the situation here on Long Island, and he said there, especially Nassau County, there's no jobs for blacks.
But I think the hospital was a very good thing because there were a lot of jobs, and there was job training too at North Shore University Hospital. And there were a lot of people I knew who got jobs there by the time in the 60s.
And North Shore Hospital was built, I think, in 1954, and it was much smaller than it is now. It was a small hospital, and many of the people from Manhasset were the first to work in there and open up their hospital. Matter of fact, at one time, most of the people that worked there was from the Spinney Hill area, you know, but this was a main source of income in this area, the North Shore Hospital. And when it opened up, they really gave the people in this community the jobs.
It's a sham. I don't want no handouts. Give me a job up. And that's never been done. We've never had equal parity. The persons here who've been blessed financially have not really invested what they could invest into this community. It's a sham. It's criminal. But when I think about, and I hold no revenge, but when I think about the privilege and the blessings and the affluence that we're surrounded with, and we get peanuts and we get crumbs and we get sawdust. We don't get the logs, we get the afters. Okay, have there been some inroads? Yeah. Trickle down? Yeah. North Shore Hospital? Yeah. But how many minorities have they trained in upscale positions over the course of 20, 30, 40 years? But I wonder often if this community was white, what would we have to do? What would happen then in terms of giving back? And we don't want you to give us anything. We want you to use your skills and your resources and that you have available to empower us so that we can increase the quality of life in our families like you do with your family.
And we used to go sleigh ride up and down the street, and in fact, you could get on a sled on Newdale Drive and go all the way down the hill to, which is now Community Drive. Now, it used to be Valley Road.
We played mostly at the Valley School. At that particular time, there was a big baseball field there. And we usually played there at the Valley School or somewhere around the Valley School. And at that time, there wasn't so many houses, so there was a lot of woods.
We used to play all up in the woods there, all kind of cops and robbers and things like that. And it's quite, it was a great big playground,
We just played. I mean, where the hospital is, that was our playground. Where the golf course is, we would explore the woods. In the winter, we would go sledding. When it was very cold and the snow would pack and be icy, you could take a belly walk from up where the expressway is and go almost down to Northern Boulevard. And we also used to skate on Whitney's Pond, build bonfires, and the ice would be frozen for sometimes a whole month at a time. We had very cold winters. We didn't know anything about boundaries. As I say, we used to roam up on the polo field, up on the golf course. I remember coming home from school one day, and this was when my dad was living, so it was before 1940, and as we were pulling into the yard, my dad looked at my mom and said, "Look, they put up a fence," which was across our backyard. So we didn't know anything about surveys, and the land was just ours. It wasn't Community Drive, it was Valley Road. It was a very narrow, winding, tree-lined street with no sidewalks.
Valley Road was so narrow, when two cars passed each other, you could smell the paint. And it was crooked, man. I'm telling you, it was crooked. As a matter of fact, it was so crooked, you see Community Drive now is straight. Over there where that nursing home and stuff is, right off of Pond Hill Road, you see that little crooked road go around there? That's Old Valley Road, man.
My mother lived on Valley Road, just where the highway, which is Northern Boulevard, divided itself from Valley Road. It was like a valley. My mother lived over restaurant / what they used to call a little juke joint. Pete Moore's, I think it was called. That's where young kids used to go because they were called piccolos. Now they're jukebox. I don't know if they even have them anymore. Jukebox, and they had a place where you could dance. And when you cross Northern Boulevard, then you would be going into East Shore Road.
Well, on the corner, across the street from where the car wash is today, there was a place called the Carolina Tavern. Okay? I remember who the bartender was. Charles Hudson. He was the bartender. Charles Hudson was an old dude, man. Yeah. And you come on up, and they had some houses, here and there. And you come on up, and you stop where the park entrance is there, across from where the senior citizen is now. There was an old house in there. Old house. It was a schoolhouse. Indians built it. They used, people used to go to school in there. And that was out there when I became a teenager, it was still there. And they came and they eased it on down near the water. And then they eased it on the other side of the water. And then they eased it all the way out to exit 48. I know where it is. They eased it out to exit 48, you understand? And call it Resurrection Village. That's where it is. That's where it is. I always felt they stole it. Because, you know, it's in our community. You understand what I mean? You know, they can't have that. But that's where the house is. Now, we keep going up, you understand, we get to the corner of Tony's mother's store. You understand? It was like a luncheonette type thing. You can go in, man, you know, they jerk a soda, give you a ice cream cone, you know. And then we go down to East Shore Road to Bill Ellison's. That was called the Dewdrop Inn. You know what I'm saying? I had the pleasure of living up in the loft of the Dewdrop Inn. You know, it was a beautiful place up there. I had a studio. I had a studio apartment up there. I hated to lose that. You understand? But Urban Renewal got me. Now we go on up to the Silver Star, and then Charles Hudson, you know what I'm saying, got in there, and Charles Hudson was like a member of the family, you know, and we used to rally in there sometimes after some football.
I was bused to Lakeville School. A lot of people never have stopped to think about why Lakeville School would be in Little Neck. Well, at one time, where we lived in Lakeville, New York. The house still stands there now. 471 Community Drive, Manhasset. It was 471 Valley Road, Lakeville. But I'd like to show you the pictures when my mother went to school. Lakeville School there were as many black as there were white as people after the 1900s. I feel that it got to be more prejudiced than it was when everybody was poor, everybody was farmers, and the government wasn't as strong as it became.
The greatest shock to me when I moved to Manhasset was that here I was in Manhasset, New York, coming from South Carolina, which was had segregated schools, but coming to Manhasset, supposedly be a rich area, to find that there was a segregated school in Manhasset.
There was the Valley School, which was what you now know as E.O.C, and that's where the kids went from K through 6. And the teachers were very lackadaisical, and by the time they came to the junior high, which is where they were integrated, they were behind, and they were uncomfortable.
The Manhasset Valley School, which is not E.O.C, the community center. Yeah, you can still see the school sign, Manhasset Valley. You can barely see it, and of course the cornerstone says 1929. You know the history of what happened. You know, the education system kind of went bad.
We discovered that even the books and the materials that they were using were completely different from the materials that the elementary schools were using at Muncie Park and Plandome Road, which meant that when the children reached the junior high school from the Valley School, there was no way they could compete and be up to date with those kids because they weren't even on the same level because they didn't have the same materials that those schools had.
And what happened was when the new superintendent came into town, he took all the great teachers out. And this, of course, this happened around the latter part of the 50s and in the 60s.
There were many nights, Olga Jenkins, myself, Lil Knox, and Claire Heinzen, is white. She's now deceased. She lived up in Plandome, and she was really a spearhead for integration of the school. She did not like what was taking place. There were many nights we sat in my house, Miss Knox's house, Olga Jenkins' house in Great Neck, or in Winter Claire's house in Plandome Road to after midnight, trying to work out what can we do next and take back to the community. But the one thing about it, no matter what we did or what we talked about, we always brought it back to the community, because it wasn't just for us, it was for the community. It was for all the children of the community, for the people. And Olga Jenkins was really, she was really great, yeah. Who is now Dr. Jenkins, yeah.
People need people. And if we don't build this world, starting with education, we can't erase the history, our past history. And without education, which is vital for survival, because if we're not able to compete, then we always remain the same as we had been. In a sense, I would think, and I've said, it's what I call modern day slavery. You keep people enslaved if you keep them behind.
So the NAACP and some neighbors of the community, we got together and brought a court case.
The case was named after my son. His name is Ralph Blocker. I was working as a domestic. I was a day worker. And the woman that I was working for, I don't know if she questioned me about whether or not I had children in the school system. I don't know how. And she probably asked me, did I know about the court case? And I said yes. And as we got into the conversation, I said to her, the case was named after my son. And that woman, honestly, it was not fake. She was not pretending. She was shocked. But I remember her saying to me, she was in the court the day that I testified. She said, I thought there was something very familiar. I think it was your voice more than looking at you. Because in court I was dressed when I went to her. I don't know if I had on a uniform, but I had on clothes that I would work in rather than dress. And so that was a good experience. I didn't get paid anything extra for it, but it was just a good experience, because she was a person that made me feel that she thought it was a worthwhile case.
Yeah, Lily is my good friend. I became friendly with her when the case was going on, and Lily was at the court every day and really willing to present herself. She was a sacrificial lamb, because they put her on the stand and they talked about her past and her ex-husband, and they really tried to negate what Lily was saying, because she was saying that the school was lousy and it wasn't meeting Ralph's needs and so forth and so on. And they did, she would call me after she got out of court, and she would tell me the things that happened, which I couldn't believe, but I believe them. Byron Jones was the NAACP lawyer. So he lived in Great Neck, and he was black. He worked very hard to try to negate what the school lawyers were saying, but they were saying some awful things about the black community, implying that if they put them in Muncie Park and Shelter and Plandome Road, they still wouldn't do anything because they were a bunch of shiftless colored people.
When we were integrating the schools in Manhasset, I can feel comfortable after anything after that, because when we walked into the courtroom after about 2 weeks, that Monday morning, the first thing the NAACP lawyers said to me, "Ruth Robertson, you were on first this morning." So I went on. The school had a lawyer that was very, very tough with us. And they cross-examined me, and they did their best because they wanted to win, not for us to win. And they cross-examined us, and when they finished, the judge, I answered all my questions in a proper way. His final question was, the lawyer, "Wouldn't you rather your children attend a school where they just walk right up the hill or down the hill or jump the fence, rather than walk up the hill in the cold?" And I said to him, "No, I'm not interested in how far my kids have to go to school or the kids of the valley. I'm interested in the children's education."
In the 60s, we were wondering what we were going to do with our children. But then they won that court battle, and all the kids were transferred to Manhasset, and they closed the Valley School.
The NAACP won the suit at that time, and so, but I don't remember I mean, I didn't follow it up, but it was an unusual kind of experience to be a part of.
The problem at that time, from what I understand, was that the school system, I don't think it was so much the Board of Ed, it's just the school officials didn't want to integrate. I think the Board of Education wanted to, and the administration wasn't at it at the time. Not all administration now, because I've talked to them when I got on the Board of Education, that they wanted, to integrate the schools. So at that time, the community got together. You have to be involved in your community at all times. You can't never fall asleep. And so at that time, the community got together.
To commemorate this momentous victory, the African American families of Spinney Hill marched to the Plandome Road School in Manhasset.
I know that I marched along with the pastor of the church at that time, was Reverend James C. Brown, and as a youngster, I was involved in the march. It was a most memorable experience to be involved in that situation. I didn't know the political ramifications at that time.
And it got kind of nasty at times. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Why the Board of Ed or why the school system allowed that, I don't know. I wasn't much involved in marching or anything like that. You just read in the newspaper what was going on. And then, the parents got together. That's all. The community got together and said, "Hey, this is too much." And that's something that getting together, you can accomplish a lot of things, and it's need to get back together again because things are not all that great.
I do not believe, and I could almost say for certain, that it was not so that we had equal opportunities. Because if you sit children in the same classroom and they feel less than, and you're not assuring that they are not less than, then you won't have the same product. The same as in a bakery or in any other business. If you don't give full attention and time to the same cakes that you're baking, you won't get the same product.
One of the problems with many of the teachers, was that they had not been exposed to black people. They had gone to white schools, they lived in segregated communities, so that they weren't really comfortable. But there were some who were, and the ones who were comfortable, really, it made a difference. The art teachers, I can think of Jean Gobb, and there were others too. I'd have to look in the yearbooks to go back, but they weren't all horrible. And I'm sure that some of the kids remember some of the teachers who really helped them.
I remember one teacher that I learned the most from was Mrs. Smith. I don't know if anybody remember, I look in my yearbook, and Mrs. Smith, she was an English teacher. I learned more in that 1 year, that last year, my last year in high school, about writing than I did the whole time I was in school. And the time that she took to show me how to write. It was amazing. And I remember her, and but she really stood out. She really stood out. And she was just like, she took the time to sit down and say, this is how you write, this is what you need to do to make things flow. And people like them were the difference.
Yes, I remember Mr. Belcito, one of the kindest gentlemen I've ever met in my life. He was an extra studies teacher. And I went to him several times for extra help in certain subjects. And sometimes I just went into his room just because it was relaxing to be in his room. He worked as a extra studies teacher also at the Learning Center. Now this is when the Learning Center also was still in the old location, which would have been on Pond Hill Road. And if I'm not mistaken, he ran it for a while.
Sue Crane was the principal for 1 year and a guidance counselor. And the year that Sue was a guidance counselor for the seniors, she placed every black kid, she found a college for every single one of them. That was Donald Perry's class, I think. Ralph Blocker, Timmy Brown. There were about, I would say, 11 kids, black kids. And she found colleges for everyone, but that never happened again.
The year that Ralph graduated, everybody was going to college. There was scholarships, there were grants, and it was easy. And a lot of those young people were successful. Not everyone, but a large percentage of them, which was good. And then what happened?
And there have been some wonderful moments of progress, and then some moments where when you reflect on it, you wonder why there isn't more progress. Because when you speak to people one-on-one, people up here don't admit to their racism. And they're almost not aware of it. They're just within their own community. They're insulated and isolated.
First of all, they could have trained the guidance counselors and the teachers, given them sensitivity training, imparted to them the importance of making the black kids know what the level of achievement should be and making sure they reached it, because they didn't bother with remedial stuff when they brought the kids up from the valley. They knew they were behind. They just threw them into the grade level according to what grade they were in. So that's one thing they could have done. Another thing they could have done was to have an atmosphere. The white kids were not particularly kind to the black kids. They would make remarks. Well, they made remarks about the Jewish kids too. But to promote an atmosphere of, I hate to say brotherhood because it's so trite, but of cooperativeness and getting along together, etc. I blame the teachers more than I blame anyone else, because the teachers were with the kids 180 days a year, and they could have reached out to them and, made them feel at home and demanded things of them. I remember one time the black boys were wearing hats in school, and I was the only teacher who made them take off the hats in class. The others said, oh, it's not hurting anything. I said, it's disrespectful. You shouldn't allow them to wear hats in school. They wouldn't wear hats in church, and I went on and on. But that was in the late 60s, in the early 70s, and I think the whole civil rights movement made the teachers uncomfortable.
You do not have to just teach the people in your neighborhood. You teach people that don't look like you. Don't be afraid to talk and tell them what is wrong, what you know that could make a difference, how someone in a better position financially, people in high places, preaches, teaches, talk to them and say, what are you doing? How can you help?
So I had gotten to know some of the parents. We would get together, discuss the problems, try to come up with solutions. Then we would ask to meet with the superintendent or the guidance counselors, whomever we thought we could influence, and we would tell them what our complaints were. They listened very politely, but, well, they did eventually hire a black guidance counselor, and that was strictly the result of the black parents you know, asking them for that. I'm trying to think what else they did. There weren't too many pluses. We met, but one of the good things about meeting was the parents who came got to feel that education was important and that they were going to insist that their kids did well and so forth. So that was very positive. But as far as influencing the school, there was very little that the black parents could do. You know, it was a clique of white parents who were wealthy and highly educated, and for the most part they were the ones who ran the Board of Education, and the Board of Education told the superintendent what to do, and it trickled right on down, so that there was very little I could do, and there was very little the black parents could do.
I was working in Bayside in 1968 at Britt-Pontiac, and a friend of mine came to pick me up from work, and when I got in the car he told me, and I said, what? And we turned the radio on, and then right after that we started hearing about
Dr. King has been assassinated or has been killed. I said, this is crazy. And then you're riding along the highway and people are looking, you know, they look at you in your car as you're driving along. I was on the Long Island Expressway at the time, it was at nighttime. And you had the feeling that, say, things are getting worse and worse.
It was really a rough time because I could look back at the day that he was coming into Great Neck and meeting with people. He was meeting with the Jewish community, and they were starting to talk about this movement, but you know, you didn't know what it was, but you could feel it coming, and it was so interesting because I got a chance to speak to him. You know, he said to me, "What are you doing? What are you doing here tonight?" And I said, I didn't know who he was at that point. I guess the majority of us didn't know. And I said, I came down to help my mother-in-law. You know, I said, who are you? Are you an attorney? And he said, no. He said, no. I'm from Georgia. He introduced himself, you know, and it was just like any other night, a meeting. But I had such a feeling when I heard, you know. Of course, over the years, I learned to know who he was. I certainly knew who he was.
When they killed Martin Luther King Jr., I thought that I would have a nervous breakdown. I had seen him. He he would come to the various synagogues in Great Neck to raise money. He and Abernathy and so forth. And I thought that he was next to God. I really, really did. I thought that he was just a wonderful, wonderful person who was brave. And when they killed him, I then figured they had already killed Medgar Evers, and I then got really paranoid, and I decided they're going to slowly bump them all off. And then they got the Panthers in Chicago, and I was angry. I got over being sad, and I just became totally angry. I really got to feel, okay, whatever I can do, I'm going to do. And what I mean by that is whatever I can do that will help black people, no matter how much it costs me, I'm going to do it. I became, I think, even more militant than I had been. And then when they had Angela Davis in jail, we were running around raising money and getting petitions and so forth. But some black people, I think, were so devastated that they just went into a sad, depressed state during the late 60s and the early 70s, and literally withdrew from activities.
You know, there had to be somber, because at that point, Dr. King, I mean, Dr. King was, most people who wrote about Dr. King felt very strongly that Dr. King was the savior, was the, not only the moral savior, but he was the political redemptor, in a sense. Dr. King and what he stood for, and his courage, as you know, was respected not only by blacks but whites throughout the world. And so, for many, most, I would venture to say probably, felt a tremendous void in the fabric of America, not only personally, but the soul of America seemed was gone. But King represented the future, the liberating future of people caught in the web of poverty.
In response to Dr. King's death, attempts were made to bridge the economical divide. The community center was established with that purpose.
The community center that has its genesis on Pond Hill Road has a history. It was a community center, and we had people who started that center, Mrs. Treadwell and Mrs. Brazeley, who started the center. There was no E.O.C. at that time, but this is the forerunner of the E.O.C. The E.O.C. only is an outgrowth of the anti-poverty. It was the poverty when Johnson signed the bill. If you recall, I forgot what it, but that's, and they received monies to be able to stimulate communities. That's how the E.O.C. was birthed.
Oh, the earlier years of the Manhasset Community Service Center were great years, great years. There were a lot of activities, as I stated before, at the Manhasset Community Service Center. Now, when I talk about activities there, I'm talking about activities from the science club to basketball.
We had sewing. Mrs. Batillo was in charge of sewing, and then you had the music, Mr. Maynard, and then Mr. Conway. was in charge of the gym and the activities in the gym.
They had a jukebox room. Some years later, even downstairs, they had a woman come in and redecorate, which they made into the coffee house. There were sponsored trips out of the community to see shows on Broadway, to go to certain events. Even the basketball team had a league in which they played against other centers in the Long Island area.
So there was always, and then Mrs. Braisley, she had African dance. There was always activities going on during the week. And in the summertime, my first job was given to me through the Manhasset E.O.C. through their summer program. So when I turned 14, I was able to work as a counselor, and as I got older, I was that was like the only job that most of the kids in the community could work was through the Manhasset E.O.C. So it was nice. You had your own money, and it would just gave you a sense of responsibility to work.
It was a revolution for the community, because it was able to provide services, outreach programs and counseling programs, and you had professionals, counselors coming in, you had tutoring, okay, and you had money. You had a budget maybe $500,000, $600,000 at one point in time that was able to, you had outreach workers, you had community workers. I think I served in just about every position that was there. but you had a very active and very engaged community and parents, okay. Even at that point in time, parents were really concerned, and there was a visible and viable presence of families, and that sustaining the program and responding. We would have, on one occasion, just mentioning, I was director for the summer program. I had close to 200 children. That's going back, what, 30, 40 years ago. I'll tell you the kind, and we were able to accommodate them and take them all over the place.
The Community Service Center, or E.O.C., was primarily successful because of its dedicated and committed staff.
Cecil Riley was one, and Israel Milton, both very, especially Israel Milton, very delightful people to have known, very concerned people. They both were directors of the center. They were hired as program directors. That's one thing we were very fortunate to have gotten, very good leadership coming into the community to help give us direction on which way to go and how to go. Very, very good.
Mr. Meeks was an honorable person. He was he was intelligent. He was a teacher. I don't know if you know that. He was a bilingual teacher. He invested his time and energies into this community and wanted the best for the families and the children in this community. I highly regarded him as a great example of giving something back to a community when you've been privileged yourself.
I don't recall a time in my life from the time that I first started going to the Community Service Center that Ruth Patillo was not there. Oh, dude, she should be presented with a plaque, with some major award by the entire community. So she's definitely a pioneer. She's definitely somebody that has given up of herself. And even when she took over the center, I don't really think I'm sure I'm not mistaken, but you can check with her on this, I don't think she even had that much experience in running the center. I think she's someone that, once she had to take over the center, she had to learn what to do. She had to learn the ropes in terms of dealing with the youth board and dealing with the E.O.C. and she had to literally learn that job. So she should, in my opinion, she should be given a major, major plaque from the community. There ought to be some major event that's sponsored, and she should be presented with some, because she's done a lot for the Manhasset Valley residents. Definitely, definitely.
Donald Maynard, very kind gentleman, I call him, but very concerned person about the welfare of the young people in the community.
He was the music teacher at the Community Service Center. I recall him doing a lot of work with a Bryant Blunt, who wanted to learn guitar. He played at many of the shows that we presented at the center because he had a band, as well as his professional band.
Maynard, listen, with his cut off thumb right here, yo, he taught them. Brian became the master bass, Druck, B. Floyd, and they made a band. Mr. Maynard took some guys from the community, created in them, and they took it to another level. Mastered what they played.
The kids rehearsed with Mr. Maynard. Mr. Maynard had his own little room, which they would go over the songs with him and the band. And then once it came time to performing the songs, then they would perform the songs, let's say, over to the left-hand side, down on the main floor.
Joseph Avery, and he was the youth director or leader at the center, and he worked with the young people also.
A very dedicated guy, a guy that you could go to any time and say, Mr. Avery, we need this for the shows. For example, we need curtains, because at one point we didn't have real curtains. Whatever we needed, Joe Avery went out of his way to supply to us to make sure that we were able to present whatever it is we wanted to present. Very, very, very dedicated gentleman, very, very dedicated, and worked at the center for a number of years.
Mr. Conway, I guess it was a force to be reckoned with. He demanded respect, and there was not one child in that community that did not know if you attended the Manhasset Bay E.O.C, you knew Mr. Conway. He was, I don't know, he looked like he was, to me, he was like 7 feet tall. He probably was only about 6 feet tall, but he was huge. And he just, even the toughest kids in the community respected him. And it was like, you looked at him like, wow. I mean, he was huge. He was, you know, I had never seen a man that big before. And some of the even toughest kids, like, you know, Floyd Brooks and that group, they all respected him. They all respected him. And he was like, you know, he had control over that. Whatever happened, he had control over it.
Mr. Clint Conway, a wonderful man, God rest his soul. A father figure to many of the kids in the community. A leader in every sense of the word, a person who cared, a person who got involved, a person who went out of his way to watch over the kids, to protect the kids, to enlighten the kids as to what to do, what to look forward to in terms of their own lives and what they may have wanted to do. I think he was very active at one point, even in getting one of our guys from the Floyd Brooks involved in the Golden Gloves. And I think he won quite a few of his matches. Again, I'm going back to the early 70s.
Conway, he named me this name called Mahaka Madui, and that means good friend. And I really admired Mr. Conway. I admired all them guys because they was like our mothers and fathers. When our father wasn't there, they gave us something to do, and it was a blessing to have them guys in our lives.
Yes, the community center was really, that's what helped keep that community and the young people together. And my hat goes off to Mr. Conway, Mr. Banks, and a group back during that time. It really kept the young people together. There were functions that were happening at the community center that not just the children wanted to attend, we as adults wanted to attend. We would attend them to support the children. There were times when something was going on, it was so full until they hardly had seating for everybody to sit down, you know.
Oh yes, we had talent shows, and Cornell Oliphant, he was very active in that, you know, putting together the talent shows, and when you'd have the guys doing the Temptations. And
yeah, who can't forget them, because they sung at the Apollo, and my cousin Willie Adams was their main singer. Willie had the high voice. It was Johnny Gray, Willie Adams, Chappelle Cisco, and there's one more, but they took it to another level, because not only just right there in the community, they was able to at least to go to Apollo and sing at amateur night.
I went to that Apollo. They performed at the Apollo. They had performed first at the Community Service Center, if I'm not mistaken, and had won, if I'm not mistaken. Then the center organized buses to go to the Apollo to support them. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they came in second at the Apollo.
Dee Dee Mitchell, Chica Blow, you know, and you know, if you was to hear Dee Dee, you might as well put Phyllis Oliphant up, because both of them used to sing, and they were talented. Dee Dee could sing, Phyllis could sing.
Well, Phyllis sang quite a few times at the center. I know one time she was involved in a talent show with some guys. At that time I was running a workshop out of Port Washington. This was through the Big Brothers program also, drug and alcohol and Big Brothers. And she sang with about, I guess it was 5, 6 guys that had a group. That was a very, very good group during that period of time. And they entered the contest and sang at the Community Service Center.
I used to hang out with Junior, Papa Jack's son, Brenda. Well, matter of fact, Junior and Brenda used to sing in the choir.
And I remember what a voice she had. She had such a powerful voice.
Ann Early, very, very interesting woman. Ann Early was a writer. Ann Early lived in the heart of Great Neck, not in the Valley area. And she had been asked to go inside the prison, Rikers Island prison system. And by being a writer, what she would do is she would write original scenes for the inmates to perform. And at the end of so many weeks, they would present a production of their own original material. When she came to the center, she had just done that. She worked at the center, I would say, from 1973 to maybe 76. She worked with us at the Community Service Center on original material that either she wrote or we helped her write. Anxious. Anxious was one of the plays in which Ann Early wrote. If I'm not mistaken, that play actually had been written by some of the inmates, and she helped sculpt the script for them. And what we did is we traveled around for a while with that. We had a company of people. They say we had maybe about 20 people. And we went to Port Washington, we went to Roslyn, we went to Roosevelt, and we performed this play, Anxious. And we were pretty well received. It was a very earthy, gritty play. It took place in the late 70s. We were playing characters that were somewhat much older than us, you know, but we were received very well wherever we went. Ease My Misery, another play in which Ann had written. Again, that play came out of the Rikers Island prison system, written also by a lot of the inmates. It was a collage of poems that the inmates had wrote, and we performed them. How I got into drama was actually through Mrs. Brazeley when she came to the Community Service Center. And I just stayed involved and up until she left and worked with the youngsters. And then I took some professional courses myself outside of the center, as well as being involved in the Manhasset public school system.
Well, Cornell and Bo, they was comedians, especially Cornell Oliphant. I could look at Cornell today and just start laughing. But they was very talented. Now, and I'm gonna tell you something, even in acting, great actors. Dancing, great dancers. It seemed like right here in Manhasset, the new projects and the old projects had so much talent, had great gifts.
At one point, whether they were on the basketball team, on the football team, at the high school, at some point in time during those years, they were involved in one of those big shows that was presented at that time by Mrs. Brazeley.
Back then, it was always something going on. There was never a time when I could say there was nothing going on. That was like the high point, is, you know, coming home from school or the weekend and, you know, what was going on at the center. Roller skating. I mean, that's the first time I learned how to roller skate, was in the gym, the Manhasset Great Neck E.O.C, in the gym. I mean, we went on trips, and even Mrs. Singletary, she gave me my first, I worked at the E.O.C. like every summer when I was 14, and then she allowed me to be like a supervisor. And it was like, you just like, you know, people saw things in you that you didn't see in yourself, and it was almost like building your confidence and just saying, you know what, it may seem like it was a big responsibility, but just the idea that somebody said, you know, I believe you can do that. You know, just motivate. I think that was the thing about back then, and those people, like I just mentioned, Mr. Patillo and Mr. Conway, Mr. Maynard, and all of those people. I think they motivated the kids. They made you feel like you could do whatever you wanted to do. And there were no limitations. You had no limitations. You could do whatever you wanted to do if you wanted to do something, and that was your choice.
Those early years at the Manhasset Community Service Center were extraordinary. It saddens me, though, today to see that type of fruitful involvement, not only from the Manhasset Spinney Hill residents, does not exist today. Like I said, there were many, many activities at the center. You had many, many dedicated individuals that came and taught these particular programs. Many of them did not live in the community. They came from outside of the community, but they were certainly dedicated. And you had directors throughout the years that were extremely dedicated and did everything within their power to bring in the resources, to fund the programs, to make sure that the programs were running so that the kids were actively involved outside of school. That saddens me. That saddens me because that should have been something that should have grown throughout the years and still be existing today. And there should be, and that liaison between the Manhasset Public School System and the Manhasset Valley area, the center, the residents that lived there, that should have been something that should have certainly grown through the years as to dissipating.
I would hope that it could go back to what it was. And I do believe that if it could, it would be such a great thing for the young people of Manhasset. It really would. It would be such a great thing for the young people of Manhasset. The memories would be so good.
It's through being involved in what's going on in your community, you can make it a better place.
Is that I've always been involved in sports as a child, really. We used to be so saturated with sports. I believe today that had it not been really for sports and for all of the kind of auxiliaries and activities that we were engaged in, is that some of the boys, including myself, would have been had some major problems with the law. But sports seems to take most of our energy and attention away, and that we became very serious about all of the activities of sports: baseball, lacrosse, football, basketball. Those were the major track. Okay. These were the major sports activities that we had.
Right behind the E.O.C. Center, the community center, was an open field. And I got an interesting story to talk about that. We were playing out there. That was our, we had gym in the Old Valley School. And the teacher, he would come down from Muncie Park, I think, or Plandom Road. He asked the kids that we would choose up teams and we played softball, but this time it was getting near football season. and they says, okay, do you want to play touch or tackle? And the guy says, we can play tackle. I was, 100 pounds, skinny as a rail, and I didn't want to play no tackle. And they all want to play tackle, okay. But anyway, I was in the 8th grade at that time. Jim Brown was in the 6th grade. And somehow they said that he was going to be a great athlete. But, you know, as a 6th grader, I couldn't tell. But I paid no attention to it. But anyway, he had the ball, and we out there playing tackle, and of course it wasn't no smooth lawn. It was rocks and junk and everything else out there. And I called myself tackling. Of course, he dragged me across. He dragged me. I said, "Man, this guy is going to be great." And the guy said to me, the coach at that time said, "See, Hughes did a good job." But that was the last time Hughes tried that anymore.
It seemed to be a natural for us when the center was open and we had games and we were in, we had leagues. We had 12, 13 leagues going on, taking place. It seemed like the same 10, 15 black youngsters, including me, that was involved in sandlot ball here, just graduated, just transitioned to Manhasset.
Jim, and when I say Jim, I'm talking about Jim Brown, was a he-man in high school. It was a thing of beauty to watch this guy. You understand? He was a man. He was a man playing with children. That's how it looked. You couldn't stop him one-on-one. If you want to know the truth, man, you really didn't want to hit this cat. You didn't, because he hit you, really. You know? Yeah, he ran so hard, he hit you. And he didn't have to take, you understand? He didn't have to take but like 2 steps forward, and he got the power already.
I played basketball, I ran track, football. I could basically play most all sports, but I concentrated on just those 3. Because I know when I was running track, the baseball coach wanted me to play baseball. The lacrosse coach wanted me to come play lacrosse, but I concentrated on track because that was a sprinting sport. That's the only thing I really liked, although I could play all other sports. But I excelled mostly in track and football. There's Lionel, myself, Leroy Henley, Buzzy Crawford, Butler Johnson. And then there's other sports like like Gordon Reynolds, he played lacrosse, Lionel played lacrosse, Leroy played lacrosse, and double arm, that's running track sometimes. And we had great teams.
And then we had a lot of promoters in the community that backed it, like Ken Malloy.
Ken Malloy, yeah.
And he took interest in a lot of the boys and kept them involved and made them focus on their studies.
Yeah, he was a great man.
If you excelled or showed ambition, he was behind you, encouraged you to play the sports that would get you a
if you needed help
scholarship
or anything,
or,
financial help or any kind, he was there for you.
And a really big lacrosse fan.
Yes. And he loved to help the kids from the valley. That was his main goal, because he wanted them to do well. When they can't afford to go to colleges, he would go and different colleges and get scholarships for certain kids, Well, we couldn't afford it. He was there. And I'm quite sure he's the one to help Jim Brown, and everyone else.
Yeah, for sure.
There was a partnership going on with the community and the people in the community and those who were in authority with the athletic directors in Manhasset. Not just one person being involved, but no. And not only interested in your athletic ability, they were concerned. We had to complete school. We had to work. We had to study, and they were concerned about making sure, because they were not going to let you go out for sports if you're not doing your work.
One thing that we loved to do was to go in back of the projects and play rugby. And that's why we were so good in sports. Because if we played rugby and you got to run past back 15 guys and make it back and score and you got to go back again. Can you imagine when we got up there to play football against another opponent? When I think about Bubba Mitchum, Aaron Mitchum, he might not carry the ball as much, well, he carried the ball as much as Jim Brown. He missed Jim Brown high school record, I think, by 42 yards. Bubba was sweet. Listen, when he hit the hole and cut to the left or the right, you count that as 6 points. He was like a gazelle. As soon as he get the ball, he was like, and he was gone. That's how nice he was. Everybody wanted to see this guy play. That's how nice Bubba was. I felt good just to be on the, playing with him. I wasn't on offense, but I was on defense. But he played linebacker also. But Bubba was sweet. I think as this day, Bubba's supposed to have been playing pro football. Pro. I think he went to Cheney State. But Bubba was a man on the football field. That's how sweet and nice he was.
Street ball in Manhasset was very serious competition. And I recall a couple of times even having to go to Queens a couple of summers just to develop some skills because people like James Gore were flying in the sky and dunking on people. Everybody just seemed to be able to fly through the air for some reason. There's something about those hills. It's the hills that develop people's legs in the Manhasset and Great Neck. You have to walk to school up and down those Spinney Hills and Pond Hills. You develop some type of jumping ability.
Because you're having to go uphill to get to the school. We always went the back way through the park.
And then to climb that was like a job. I mean, by the time you climb those stairs, you're like, do I need to go to school after that?
Think about it. You talking about 50, 60 steps. Do you think that when you get on the basketball court or football court, you ain't gonna be flying? Listen, you walking up sand. You had no choice but to be good.
Manhasset was such a dominant community. People would come from Hempstead, Roosevelt, to Manhasset to play. And that was always cool. The city, Jamaica.
When I think in sports, I think about John Horton, Hootie. That guy was nice in basketball. He was nice in track. I played with the Marky Johnson, Jerome Blocker, George Burris, Michael Floyd, Floyd Brooks, these other guys that was great. I was a young guy, admired them, but it allowed me to put myself up with them. And so it took me from in freshman and just allowed me to excel. Whether in football playing quarterback and halfback, basketball guard forward. I played some baseball, outfield, shortstop. I knew how to play lacrosse. They used to get me to play, but I didn't want to play. Track. And I'm just competing as I go up to my 12th year. And come to find out at the end of the year, just before I graduate, I won the Jim Brown Award, the best athlete of '77. I didn't know, I was just playing sport. Why? Because I was just living and enjoying. When you think about the Ed Corleys playing in the backfield with Jim Brown, you look at these guys and they're your role models. You might not tell somebody, but you picture them in your mind, and you're trying to excel like they did. And I'm pretty sure that it was just a sport for them, but some of them took that sport to another level. Like Jim Brown, he took it to another level. Well, the park, Whitney Pond Park, where they have the swimming pool. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, the greatest swimmers was us, the black folks. We owned the pool. We owned the diving board. Matter of fact, any other people come out from another town to come swimming, we will put on a show, whether it was Bubba Mitchum, or Michael Floyd, the big orca, would take the water out the pool just in one dive, or John Horton with the swan dive. You know, we all was good in diving, we all was good in swimming. So we would definitely spend a lot of time in the pool. And after we spend the time in the pool, we would go home and clean up. You know, when I say clean up, take a shower, get dressed, and come back. I don't know if it was Monday or Wednesday, but the Tin Canteen would come there, which they have different bands coming. You know, they have the Cokes, red cups with the Coke in it, and the pretzels. But then after that, the band stopped playing, and it was on. You know, we'd be out there dancing. Then if the basketball court, we would rule the basketball court. People come from out of town. You know, if dudes was nice, we run across the street and get the ball players, and we come back and we have some good time.
During the prime time, there's a prime time and then there was an after time. Prime time was from 6 to 9. That's when the sun went down. You played all your games if you were lucky to get in from 6 to 9. Then you had the stragglers like myself who stayed because we were going to jump in the pool later on, like around 10 or 11. But at one time, and that's why it was kind of getting emotional earlier today, because around this time, that court would be full. And there was always the main court where you got your runs, and then the other courts where, you know, people just played. But that main court, where it just seems like it's deserted now, you had to wait online for winners. Every night. Every night.
I remember Whitney Pond being very active at one time. The basketball courts and the pool. I remember the concession stand down at the pool area. It used to be very alive down in the park. I remember a lot of times of course, climbing over the fence and doing the night swimming. But I mean, it wasn't even like a sneak. It wasn't like we was breaking into anything. I mean, we was just going swimming. We didn't care about who came or anything. We hopped the fence and went in the pool. And there was times at night that the pool was just as crowded as it was in the daytime, and it wasn't even open.
You know, I remember back then the rowboats when we used to pedal. We'd go out there and pedal around and, you know, just do things. Ice skate, I remember when the pond used to be frozen, we'd go out there and ice skate at night, you know, and it was a lot of things growing up in Manhasset that's not there now that we had back then. In other words, it was things for us to do. Right now, you know, it's not nothing for the community, for the young kids, and you gotta understand, idle time is the devil's workshop.
Look like nothing's gonna change. Everything still remains the same. I can't do what 10 people tell me to do, so I guess I remain the same.
So I remember when one of the James first came to Manhasset. I think it was Wilbur James, and I have a program where you can see where he took an ad in the Journal.
Hotel James, as it was known, was not standing. It was Wilbert's Rest. That was the name of it, Wilbert's Rest. That was his brother, Wilbert. Wilbert died. Tommy came out of the Army and ran Wilbert's Rest, and then he added to it, and it became a nice place. Now when he opened it up, man, with jazz. Nice seating, man. You come in and you walk up on the platform there, man. You sit around the rails, man, and the guys be playing over here. Nice, very nice, man.
Hotel James, yeah, he used to have all those people, big acts coming from New York City out to Hotel James, and you had to pay like a fee to get in there. I never had to pay, but you had to pay a fee to get in there.
Oh yeah, I've been there several times when they had the amateur nights, and well, everybody used to live there, you know. Some of us now play goody goody, but we used to stomp our feet and party quite often up there, you know. And he had different people from different, entertainment. Some that were, and there also used to be Inez Fox. She was became a a star, I guess, and you could say, in the music world. And she used to also sing there and at Gibson's.
Millie Jackson even got started out there on the Hotel Jam. You know the first record she ever made, but it wasn't a hit. My Man is a Sweet Man. You ever heard that? That was Millie Jackson. You had the Detroit Emmys. You had the Detroit Emmys. The Manhattans, and then you had the Delphonics. They were local before they even made anything.
Wilbert Harrison was a regular. And my man, too bad he's dead now, you know. Wilbert Harrison, as a matter of fact, I got an album here he gave me, the one he did after Kansas City, Let's Work Together. Yeah, I got it. He went in his Cadillac and got it out of the trunk. I said, Wilbert, you know what I'm saying? Man, I've been asking you, and you promised me an album, man. And come on, we went out there and he got it out the trunk. You know what I'm saying? We went in there and drank up some liquor, because he loved to drink. That what killed him, you know?
I had a friend of mine by the name of Willie Adams. He was up in the Date. We always competing against one another. And Willie Adams was like a stylistic man. And God bless the day, he was always coming into my heart. And every time I hear this record, Have You Seen Her? But only record I had to sing to kill Willie Adams' little bus was Mama Real, and that's by Joe Simon.
St. James was one hell of a spot in its heyday. When I moved to Harlem, and I lived in Harlem for about 15, close to 20 years, there were older people that I met in Harlem that used to hang out at St. James. And they knew a lot of the people, my father being one of them, they knew a lot of the people from the Manhasset Valley area, and they gave me history about that particular club that was it was a top-notch club in its day. And when I say top-notch, I mean you had performers, say Jackie Wilson of that, now we're going back into the 50s. So you had performers of that caliber that were performing at St. James during its heyday, which is something that I had never known.
Okay, gotta do Mr. Witherspoon. Can't leave Mr. Spoon out. Mr. Spoon, my man.
Yeah, Mr. Witherspoon was a cook. Yeah, Mr. Witherspoon, he was a cook there. And I remember him cooking food. He used to cook for everybody. Everybody used to love his food too, boy. You know, they wouldn't go nowhere else, man. If he wasn't cooking, nobody would eat. Yeah, Mr. Witherspoon, he was a nice fellow too. He's a very kind guy.
He had the restaurant up by Hotel James on Northern Boulevard. Yeah, he was another great businessman.
Mr. Spoon had a thing where he'd sit in the middle of the floor and he make this big thing ice cream, man. He be there trying to make that ice cream. And you know, you can't wait. Everybody in line can't wait. He making this shit right there on the, oh man. And it tasted so good. It tasted so good, man. And we go and run, get money, come back, and Mr. Spoon ain't got no more. Now we mad at Mr. Spoon. You know what I mean? Man's arm tied, man. We mad at Mr. Spoon because he ain't got no more ice cream. You know? And Mr. Spoon, don't be mad, I have some more tomorrow. I want some now, you know? You know how kids are, man.
Mr. Witherspoon was the greatest person. Oh, yes. And could cook.
Yeah.
But he was great friends with my mother. And every time he'd see me, come on here, let me give you something to eat. Take this home. You know, he was that type of person. Very giving person, very loving person. And everybody loved him.
I remember the Three Brothers. I remember the George Record Shop. There was Hotel James. There was the Beer House. There was Johnny's. And that was just the right side. There was a, matter of fact, across from the hotel was a beauty salon. Then it was Papa Jack's. Then it was this little alleyway. And within that little alleyway, we used to go to church there, which was First Baptist. And after the alleyway, there was Gainer's Barbershop. After Gainer's Barbershop, you go down to like a little diner. There was a little diner, then we cut through the alleyway, and you could take that way to go to the center. But back then, if I could just unfold it right now, I'll go up there on Northern Boulevard. I mean, it was just probably, I mean, things was a penny and a nickel. You know, even though you had Johnny's down here and the three brothers up here, you still had to go to Papa Jack's. Because Papa Jack's had everything in there that you want.
You know, Papa Jack's store was big because you didn't have to cross Northern Boulevard. So all the penny candy and all the cakes and stuff, Papa Jack had in his store everything a store down south have.
That was the store. That was the black store in the hood. Or that was the black bodega for the projects.
I remember Papa Jack's. They were right across the street from our store. Our store was established in 1939. However, my dad didn't go into the business until 1966 or 1967. It was owned by, the original owners were two owners, and they sold it to three brothers in the early 60s. And my dad had a partner originally and bought it in 1966 or 1967. My dad, Irving, good guy, got along with everybody. Just a likable person. He was nice to everybody. Had a lot of friends in the neighborhood. I started working there when I was about maybe 10 and a half. And when I got out of high school, I worked full-time. And we've had it till current. Up the street from us was the three brothers. The three brothers owned the delicatessen, where you can go and get cold cuts and milk and juice and bread and things of that nature. They were low-keyed, soft-spoken guys, extremely friendly. And I do remember they closed for lunch though, which I found a little strange for a deli to close for lunch. All three of them went out to lunch. Good guys.
My mother owned a beauty parlor also at the top of Spinney Hill, where the Bina building is now. The Bina Pontiac. She had a beauty parlor there on the side of Bob Curry's, I believe it was Bob Curry's bar. And from there she moved to Carter's on the corner of Allen Drive, where she stayed in that building until she retired, which was been about in 1980, maybe 1980, around 1980, she retired. And she had several people working for her. One was Geneva Taylor and Katie Anderson, who were friends of ours, and they worked in the beauty parlor for many years. And she did a lot of hair, a lot of people's hair. I remember many of the girls that worked on those sleep-in jobs came, and then you had many of the people that lived in the projects that came to her. You know. Benny Gibson's was a bar. It also had a cafe on the left side of it, and then you had the bar, and then you had chairs that people sit in, and then they had a back room where they had entertainment, and different groups would come in and sing. I don't know if you know Bobby Boyd. He was one of the band leaders that he used to have.
I had played in different bands in Augusta, but I came to New York in '64 after graduating from high school, formed the band, started playing around different clubs, Jamaica, Inwood, Long Island, different places. But I heard about this place out in Grant they called Gibson's. Well, Hotel James was the hot spot. But it was a lot going on out there, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights. My brother-in-law took me out there just to check things out. He said, you need to bring your band out here. Let me go see what's going on. So I went out there and I saw Blvd Jr. and the different bands playing across the street at Gibson's. And during that time, Harvey Giddings was the the club owner at the time. Harvey brought me in, and my band started playing there Thursday nights out front in the bar part. There were two parts to Gibson. There was the front part and the back part. So we were good enough to play in front. But after I did so good out front, then I went to the back, started playing in the back. And, but there was a lot going on at Gibson. Frankie Crocker came down, was bringing in different stars, J.D. Bryant, Willie Hightower, Brooks Odell, different, Billy Stewart, before he got killed in the car accident. But it was a lot of major stars came to Gibson's. Whenever we didn't have a name artist that would come in, Brooks Odell or Freddie Scott or Frankie Crocker or somebody would come, I would handle those. I would be the star that weekend. And like I said, I would go down to Harlem, 125th Street, and buy the most flamboyant outfit I could find, an orange suit, pink suit, purple suit, patent leather shoes to go with it. And I would have someone to introduce me as an artist, as a star, you know. And I would be so sharp when I came out. People really didn't care about some of the other big name acts when they came in, because they knew I was there. And I tore them up, man. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, I haven't seen no place like that around Long Island since. Spinney Hill was really the spot.
There were many who worked for the betterment of the community, who gave their time and effort for the greater good. They certainly were not pacifists. They were the activists.
During that time, we were all community activists. You understand? I might have been a little more on the militant side, you know, but yeah, we were all community activists. You had Brother Leon, you had Brother Parker, better known as Peanuts. You know, that we started the Community Coalition Corporation for Better Housing.
Peanut Parker was definitely a leader in the community. He was one of the ones that was always up front. Peanut Parker was another man that was not afraid to say what he needed to say, and he was always, Peanut Parker was always for the community, always for the community. Although Peanut Parker also, you know, his outside life was he was up on the block. You would see Peanut Parker up on the block, but he was down there fighting for the community at the center also, you know what I mean? Peanut Parker was a good man.
Pauline Woods was a mother who was concerned about her kids and who was concerned about the community. Now, she was one of the few who would always speak up. She didn't mind, you know, being rejected or if they got sarcastic or anything. Pauline would speak her mind, and she did, I think, a lot of good as far as, see, what we were trying to do, and Lily Knox and Pauline and some of the other, Dottie, they were able to make the white community feel guilty about what they were doing. And that was the first step. Until they felt guilty, they weren't going to do a darn thing. So those women were really the ones who, now Parker and Burton and them frightened them, but Pauline and the women really, they made them identify with what their children wanted.
Ben Jenkins and Olga Jenkins met at University of Michigan. My brother and my sister-in-law met at University of Michigan around the same time. So when I met Ben, you know, we just became fast friends, and then he went to work for the schools and I went to work for the schools, and I thought he was just terrific.
Another honorable person. He was, I think, a coordinator. I think it was like a coordinator of the guidance department, but he made sure that he impacted African American men and women, young men and women who aspired to go to college, that he would make it possible, even if, and he tutored and helped to nurture many young black African American men, young men and women who would not normally have gone to school had it not been for his major intervention.
Not only that, he was very helpful with us in helping to file applications into the housing and the projects, you know, helping people to find places to live, yeah.
I remember Archie Blacknall. I remember Archie Blacknall as being part of E.O.C. I also remember Archie Blacknall as being the director of the CSC.
He was working with kids, but yeah. Well, he felt that the children from his community were not integrated into the classroom, that they were not treated equally, that the assumption was that if you're black, you're not smart. And he was very angry about it, so he decided he would do something about it. He'd run for the school board and create change from within.
Not only did they give time, but they gave their expertise into impacting people in this community. This church and I shared a very similar kind of a journey. This church will in October, in October will be 74 years of age.
When they built that church, I'm going from a lot of things I heard that Mr. Carter, Saul Butler, August Brown, some of those men were responsible for the building of the church. And I think those men actually built the church. It wasn't built by, you know, people outside of the community. I think it was built mostly by them.
Reverend James C. Brown was very loved. He was the pastor of that church for as long as I could remember.
He was a kind of a very caring person, very concerned about the community, about the congregants. He was instrumental, really, and I think helping many families who joined this church build them up, not only spiritually, but he gave them a sense of being making them accountable and responsible for not only just coming to church, but looking out for their families and taking care of their families, being employed. And so out of that particular situation, out of that concern, many of the people who joined this church purchased their homes in the Great Neck Manor, Spinney Hill section. Okay, so he had a major, not only spiritual influence, okay, but he had a major moral influence, he had an economic influence. I think he was really like a pioneer in helping people to shape their destiny.
The church in the community was very important, because the church in the community compared to today, the church in the community to me is a great difference. The church in the community at that time served the young people. There were things that it really served the young people and gave them a feeling of wanting to be in church and wanting to be there. I don't know what has happened now that the young people doesn't have that feel now that they did. The churches were filled with young people, the Sunday schools, the programs. The kids didn't mind going to church, to Sunday school, back to service, and back to the afternoon. And choir practice, ushering, altar boys, girls into everything there was, you know. It was very important. And I also see now the church in the community is an important thing But we've lost our young people. We've lost our young people. A lot of our young people we've lost when it comes to the churches. I don't know why, and I don't know what we have done that has caused this to happen. Yeah, it would be great, and I do pray every day that I could see that this go back, that our young people could filter themselves back into the church, especially our young men.
The church should be the vocal point for every community.
We have 4 black churches in the community. We have the church on Community Drive, which is the little white church that sits on Community Drive, which they made it a historical landmark. Then you have Reverend Corley's church, which is on High Court. Then you have, I'm not sure who the pastor is of First Baptist, which is on, what is that, Allen or Udell? Allen. And then you have St. Paul. So you have 4 churches, and I cannot ever remember a time when those 4 churches came together. I think that the churches have to come together. We may be, many members, but we're still one body in Christ. And when we're talking about coming together, the leadership in the church has to come together. And I don't see that happening. It's not about who's going to be in charge. It's about doing what's best for the community. And sometimes you have to step back in order to let things happen, and you might not be in charge. It's not even about you being in charge. It's about what is best for the community, and I think that's why, yes, the churches would be very instrumental in bringing our community together, but the leadership in the church has to come together first.
Hector Gale was a major player in that urban renewal project.
He was on the E.O.C. executive board for Nassau County, and he was president of NAACP for a while. And I don't know exactly what else his function was or his job was, but I know that he was always active politically.
Hector Gale was in charge of urban renewal. The powers that be had decided that Northern Boulevard needed to be redeveloped. Now, when I went to Manhasset, there was a black barber shop, a black beauty parlor, a black hotel, a black bar. They were all located on Northern Boulevard, up from East Shore Road. So Hector was in charge of urban renewal. Hector told the people that if they would move out, the business people, that if they would move out, everything would be redone beautifully and they would come back to a wonderful situation.
I will never forget, we had a meeting one night at the center, and the meeting that night somehow was about Spinney Hill and the Northern Boulevard, or what was going to happen. So they came in and they had had a meeting that day before coming. So they came in with some, I don't know how you would call it, referendum or whatever they were going to pass around. And it was saying how they wanted to take some of the parts of Northern Boulevard and turn it into make it into different, take what it was, taking away the black, their business of the black. And that meeting became very, very hot that night. And I never forget, I said to my son, because you were young, you don't know what's taking place here, but I see what's going to take place here. I don't like it. And I said, Northern Boulevard will become an all-white business. There will not be a black business remain on Northern Boulevard if you were to put this referendum through and take it and work with it and ask for government money for what your plans are, it's not going to work. We are going to lose everything.
As far as what was supposed to go up there, there's supposed to have been houses on both sides. Over there where that big red building is, right on the curve there, well, in there was Tin Can Alley, okay? And there were supposed to have been houses there, you know, row town houses there. There's supposed to have been row town houses on the other side, where Gibson and CDs was supposed to be. And somehow, after we left, everything went to pot, man. Everything went to pot.
It was promised that there would be the housing built on the south side of Northern Boulevard, between the animal hospital, and I can't remember the boundaries going east and west, but there was housing built. But of course it was limited. It wasn't any vast thing that we thought was going to go up, but Cherrybrook was built at that time.
Them little scatter site houses, that ain't what it was supposed to be. You see these row town houses here? That's what you're supposed to have over there, on both sides of the street. You know, I know. Yeah, that's Project A27. That's the name of it. Project A27. Because I did the survey, you understand, all the way from East Shore Road all the way up to where Skank Avenue comes around. I did that survey there.
Ray's barber shop was where I used to go to get my humongous afro cut when it was so big I couldn't get it in my husband's car. And Ray and the other business people were told that they were going to move them to trailers, that they would be in the trailers while the construction was going on the north side of Northern Boulevard, and that then they would move them back to where they had been, which of course was a joke because it wasn't going to happen. So they stayed in the trailers for a while, and then for all intents and purposes, they just were displaced. And to this day, I don't know what happened to them.
Well, I remember that the business people, who owned the restaurants and the taxis and everything, they were promised that if they moved across the street, they would come back when everything was complete. That was called urban renewal.
I don't think there was a plan to put back black-owned businesses once they got tore down, because I think these people came and offered so much money that a black person at that time didn't have a chance to open up another business. If I could remember correctly, because these guys, that was already prime real estate, and they already wanted it. You know, they wanted that hill for a long time.
Well, of course, when it was developed, it was too expensive. There was no way that any black people could move into those. They became doctors' offices and business offices and things of that sort. So some of us felt that Hector had really sold out, had misrepresented the situation, because if it was going to become a white area, there should have been some little portion left for the black businessmen. They would just forget it. They were gone.
And Lord, it's sad when I come to this, when I see what was built, because you had some people come in with negative attitudes. I don't know whether they were paid or not, you understand, but they came in, and I'm talking about there were people in the community that come up against us, okay? And we said, okay, that's the way you want it. This is what's gonna happen. The man's gonna come by, and the man's gonna take everything in the community You understand? We're trying to tell you this in advance. So we stepped aside.
And when it did happen, as it was happening, it was really saddening. It was. We talked about it, we met about it, we had many meetings and discussed the sadness of what was taking place, because we felt then that that was becoming the downfall of the community, that was taking us down, you know? Yeah, that here we were going down, yeah. And it brings me back to what I said before, that what my mother said to me and my brother, they only take from you what you let them take from you. And that's what we did. Yeah, that's what we did.
We love Great Neck in Manhasset. We've seen a lot of changes over the years. We've seen a lot of buildings being torn down. Remember, there was quite a few businesses. There were barber shops, there were stores that were black owned. There was Hotel James, which was owned by Tommy James. There were properties that all up and down Northern Boulevard, on the left and the right, that were black owned. So I often say that those people were role models that owned those businesses, teach us that we as black people and black kids can own businesses. You don't see that many today, but we did own a lot of property, a lot of businesses in this community, which I'm thankful for. We have watched, I said, different changes, you know, over the years. But we love Manhasset, and we want our youth to become more than what they are today. We want them to become business owners, professionals. We would like to see changes in Great Neck. All over the country, we would like really to see changes, you know. So I just want to say that we love Manhasset, and we want Manhasset, the best for Manhasset.